Wagner does melody differently from everyone else, as we found out in my last video. A brief recap: Wagner hated the opera of his day. Rather than separate arias and choruses broken up by audience applause, he wanted to create a single flow of drama that would only be broken by the audience clapping at the end of the opera. So, bye-bye all the traditional arias and choruses and recitatives of his day. Wagner wanted to create a single, endless melody. Now, this doesn't mean Wagner's music isn't structured, it's just structured differently. And the way it's structured is through the use of leitmotifs. And this means paying more attention to the orchestra. Let me show you what I mean. This is the opening to our Liebestod, Isolde's death song she sings at the end of Tristan Isolde. Listen to this 7-note pattern. That right there is a leitmotif. And here's the first time we hear that motif in the opera, sung by Tristan. Now that 7-note pattern is what we would call a leitmotif, a musical idea that can represent any number of things: a character, an object, a feeling, fate, death, really anything. In this case, those 7 notes are known as the love-death motif. So if Wagner wants to get love-deathy over us, which he tends to like doing, he can use these 7 notes, not just in the singing, but in the orchestra. As we listen on a bit, that love-death motif loses its last 3 notes. Now, those 3 notes, the ones that get chopped off, bear a remarkable similarity with one of the most famous motifs in the entire opera, the celebrated Tristan chord, which itself is made up of 2 separate motifs. The first, suffering, and the second, desire, those rising notes, desire. And this makes sense. If our 7-note motif is a love-death motif, these first 4 notes more represent death, whereas the 3 rising notes are closer to desire or physical love or bliss. Do you see how all the concepts can meld with one another? And you can take it further, since that desire motif, that rising motif, sounds eerily similar to the rising strings that make up the climax of our Liebestod here, which itself represents a, you may as well call it, sexual as well as musical climax. It's a system that works by chopping units into smaller units or building those smaller units up into a greater whole, and it's not surprising this would appeal to a German. And yes, if you didn't know it, Wagner was German, since you can do similar things with the German language, adding different words together to create new words and concepts. And guess what? The word leitmotif itself is an example of exactly that. Lead, motive, leitmotif. And we have another example with the single word Liebestod, which means love, death. Anyway, leitmotifs have a plastic, creative potential that must have appealed to Wagner. He could chop them up, mutate them, transform them, clash or mix them with other leitmotifs so as to create a succession of new musical and dramatic ideas in his work, which again means the music has a feeling of restless change constantly, and that can make it hard to listen to if you're unfamiliar with the style. Let's take another motif that comes up shortly. This one features a flurry of notes that Isolde sings. This motif, the Transfiguration motif, has been called a number of things over the years. Joy through abandon, love's transfiguration, selfless ecstasy. I actually made that last one up, but that kind of proves my point. The music is describing something greater than just the words can achieve. And I'm not even going to start to get into the similarity with the Transfiguration motif and the death motif from earlier. Anyway, let's listen as that little motif gets played around within the orchestra. Now, if we're going to tackle the Liebestod, it's worth taking in one more motif that becomes crucial in the climax. It's the Bliss or rapture motif that contains that desire motif we discussed earlier, and it really helps build up the climax to the Liebestod. We first hear it in Act 2 of the opera here. And then it's used in the climax, particularly, note, not in the voice, but in the strings, the violins. Okay. I hope that it helps explaining Wagner's use of endless melody and leitmotifs. I will do a bonus video of the Liebestod itself, annotated with these motifs and some other descriptions, so watch out for that soon. Meanwhile, do the usual, like the video and subscribe, and if you hate Wagner, give this Liebestod a chance, will you? Thanks.